Hi everyone, my name is Angela and this is going to be a gigantic fall reading wrap up. I have a lot of books to talk about. These are going to be covering September, October, and November. I know that technically winter starts at like the end of December, but in my brain, December 1st is the official start of winter. Let's start off the video with my favorite genre, which is fantasy. So these are going to be all of the fantasy books that I read in the fall. First up, we have The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino. This is one of the like Lady Night books that have come out this year that have gotten a lot of buzz. I knew as soon as I saw the cover and read the synopsis for this months ago that I was going to read this, and luckily I bought it and read it like right away pretty much, and I gave this 5 stars. So this is a romantasy, but I would say more of a fantasy than a romantasy, if that makes sense. I feel like people who read a lot of high fantasy but still like romance are going to be the primary lovers of this book, rather than people who are reading like dozens of romantasy titles throughout the year. Our main character, Gray, is a magical well, which means she has all of this magical power within her, but she can't actually use it. And then magicians in this world can't actually do magic without pulling from a magical well. So she has this partner, Kier, on the battlefield, who is the magician, and they are a pair that is bonded like closer than marriage, closer than brother and sister. Like, they are saving each other's lives, they are facing death together while fighting. It is a serious emotional bond. Their kingdom is at war with the other kingdoms around them, and they get assigned on this dangerous mission together, and so we are kind of on an adventure quest sort of story, and we're following these two characters who have a very fascinating relationship. I loved this. I gave this 5 stars. Like I said, definitely going on my top 10 list of the year. I thought the writing was fantastic. I loved the world and the atmosphere. I loved the plot. I loved the romance. I would say my least favorite thing about it was probably the ending. I love like an explosive ending, and this didn't really have that, but other than that, this was like pretty perfect, and I would highly recommend. Next up, we have The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. This is a whimsical historical fantasy book about this girl who lives on a magical island off the coast of Ireland with her guardian, who is not her father, but he's pretty much a father figure, who is a magician, and she's lived her entire life on this island, but the starting point of this book is something dangerous happening, something that really opens her eyes to the realities of the world, things that her guardian has been hiding, and she has to go on a bit of an adventure to make things right. There is a rabbit companion in this book, which I really loved, and overall really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. Highly recommend if you like either whimsical or historical fantasy, but unfortunately it wasn't like a new favorite of all time. Another fantasy book that was good but not a new favorite is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is a YA fantasy novel in which all of the people with magic were killed 20 years ago. Our main character, Zaylee, lost her mother to this violence against people with magic. There is kind of a inciting incident where she has to work with a princess from the kind of oppressors in this world, and maybe there is a chance to bring back magic. I thought this was a really good YA fantasy. If you like YA fantasy, this is definitely one to pick up. I'm unsure whether or not I'm going to pick up the sequels, just because I felt like I got what I wanted and needed from this book, and I actually started reading the sequel but kind of soft DNF'd it. But yeah, this was like highly action-packed and like emotional and good. It just wasn't like a particular, favorite. Next, we have a true romantasy book. This is Tusk Love by Tia Guanzon. This is like based on a D&D inspired world, and this is definitely like a true romantasy. We have our main character, what's her name? Guinevere and Oscar are the 2 characters. She is the daughter of 2 merchants, and she is traveling with these goods when she's attacked by bandits, and luckily Oscar is there. He is this handsome half-orc, half-human guy. He rescues her, and they end up traveling together. So it really is just pretty simple in terms of the plot, but I really loved the vibes and the relationship. I had a lot of fun with this. I am pretty picky when it comes to romantasy, so it was really nice to find one that I actually liked, and I gave this one 3.75 stars. Would definitely recommend for some fun Fantasy Times. I read a highly anticipated new release, and that is Every Spiral of Fate by Tahereh Mafi. This is book 4. Yeah, book 4 in the This Woven Kingdom series, which is a YA fantasy / like fantasy romance series where there are djinn and dragons and princes and courts and found family. I'm not going to tell you the plot for the first one, but basically those are all the elements, and it is really, really good in terms of yearning and tension and character dynamics. I find it so addictive. This series makes me feel the way that I felt as like a teen, preteen, reading these types of YA fantasy books where they were just pulling me in and I was addicted to the character dynamics. That's exactly how I feel about this series. And this release specifically was a 5-star for me. I had a blast reading this. I don't think that everyone who reads the series will be as obsessed with it, but I have seen a lot of people who really, really love this. So check it out. It could be an unexpected new favorite. I especially really love books with djinn and books with dragons, so this one just has a lot that I really like about fantasy. After loving Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher, I decided to pick up Sword Heart by the same author in the same world, but not the same series. If you've ever heard someone pitch this book, you know that the main male character, is a man who comes out of a magic sword. So we have our main character, Hala, and she is in a very precarious situation. She's been like locked up in a room in a family member's house. She is like desperate and in despair. Her relatives want to steal this inheritance away from her uncle who's just died, and she takes this sword off the wall because she wants to end her life, which sounds very like serious and like heavy, but the book is very lighthearted. But when she picks the sword up and unsheathes it, a man comes out. And so she and the man, Sarkis, are kind of on a journey to escape her relatives and find some answers. They also want to find out some of the mysteries around, you know, this curse that he has on him to be a sword, and there may not be some assassins as well. I just thought this was so fun. I had a blast. This is the kind of romantasy that I love. Really clever, wonderful writing and plot and romance. It's just like when a brilliant mind like T. Kingfisher puts her pen to paper, it's going to be great, and this is the kind of romantasy I want to be spending my time on. So just an utter delight. I will say I do like this a little bit less than Paladin's Grace, but yeah, a great book. I originally read this from the library, but decided to buy myself a physical copy because why not? And there also is a sequel coming out next year, so that is very exciting. I also read A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This book I thought was going to be a very like academically driven book, quite serious, and this was actually just a paranormal romance between a witch and a vampire, very Twilight coded. Like, this book is literally a scholar, an academic person sat down and wanted to write their own version of Twilight set at Oxford. And that is what she did. And I actually really loved the first half of this book, but the second half kind of lost me, and I was really struggling to get through the last like 150 pages. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars just because it did genuinely disappoint me towards the end. I just found that the magic and the positive feelings I was having were disappeared completely, but I didn't hate it overall, so 3.5 stars feels right. But it's really hard to sum up on my experience with this book just because it was like so strange. I was like live, laugh, loving, having the time of my life for most of it, and then it just went downhill and I started to really find a lot of things very cringy. Again, this is truly Twilight coded. Like, if you read this and if you have consumed Twilight media in the past like 10 years and recall any of it, you're gonna be like, oh my god. But it also is like very academic focused, and yeah, if you like vampire books, I would highly recommend this because I think you're gonna have fun. a very confusing time. I do have books 2 and 3 in this series, so I will probably be continuing this next year. Alright, we have to talk about the Live Ship Trader series by Robin Hobb. If you're not familiar with Robin Hobb, she has this series called The Realm of the Elderlings. Well, it's not a series. It's basically a universe of books, and I think there are 20-something books. So there's like trilogies, and then there's one quartet of books, and you read them usually in publication order, and they are all in the same universe, and there are a lot of little connections between series. There are characters that reappear. Anyway, people are obsessed with this series. I myself really love the first series and gave book 1 4 stars. So I did complete book 2, which is Mad Ship, and I gave this one 5 stars. So the basic premise of this series is that we have this place called Bingtown, which is like a trader merchant town, and we have these families who kind of built the economy from the ground up, and they're like the trader family. So they're the wealthy people, the top of the economy, social class, whatever. And our main character, Althea, we do have a lot of character perspectives, but I feel like the grounding perspective is Althea. She is the daughter of a man in one of these prominent trader families. He dies. She expects to inherit his ship, but she doesn't, and that sort of sets off a chain of events that last throughout the entire trilogy. These ships are live ships. They are actually sentient. They are made with this magical, mysterious wood called wizard wood that allows the ships to actually be, sentient and talk and have feelings, and they have very strong, like, familial bonds with the families that have sailed these ships for years. Okay? That's the series. This book, book 2, was definitely amazing. It had an explosive ending. There were so many interesting plot threads from book 1 that were explored in this book that I was just kind of having the time of my life. I do think all 3 of these books are too long. I don't think any of them truly needed to be over 800 pages, but they all are. So that one was definitely, amazing. 5 stars, right? And then we get to Ship of Destiny. And I started having some really, negative feelings about this book. One, because I was getting bored. I just thought it was too long. I thought it was taking too long to get to the crux of a lot of these plot points. I thought we had too many slow and reflective moments when I just really needed the plot to just keep moving, which Robin Hobb is able to do, and she has, magnificent plots and character work, but sometimes we just spend these chapters where we're just having people kind of walk around their house and reflect. I don't know, I was bored throughout some of it, and that's not good. And also some of the decisions that she made with certain characters and plot lines towards the end of the book, I really despised. If you've read this series, you may know what I'm talking about, particularly in the last 200 pages, I think, of Ship of Destiny. There are some things that happen that I just thought were so out of character and out of the tone of this series. I still had a lot of, positive feelings because Robin Hobb is a masterclass fantasy writer, but ultimately I gave this one 3.5. It's probably my least favorite Robin Hobb book that I've read so far, so definitely a disappointment overall, but still a good book. Alright, now we have some fantasy books that I don't have physically, so I probably read them as library books, or I had the audiobook on Libro FM. Highly recommend that audio platform if you haven't checked it out before. This next book, I guess, is a fantasy book, technically, and I really disliked it, and that is A Land So Wide by Aaron A. Craig. I am going to be putting this in my worst books of the year video coming up soon, so I'm not going to look up the plot or remember it right now because I don't want to waste my time. Don't waste your time with this book, honestly. I thought it was really bad. So, first of all, we have this town. The author does absolutely nothing to cement us in a certain time period, not a century, not a decade. I had no idea when this was taking place until we got a flashback chapter, and we are apparently in I don't know, I think the 1700s or something. Thought maybe we were in the 1950s. I don't know. So that was already a red flag. And we have this town where the people cannot go out into the woods after a certain time of night. They have these kind of like pillars of stone or something that protect them from these deadly creatures that are out in the woods. And after a certain curfew, they stay in the town, and the creatures prowl around but can't get into the town. And we have our main character who is supposed to be an adult but really acts like a child. And she's just like living her life in this town, having this romance with this random boy. And at some point, she has to rescue him from danger and leave this town. And I thought that this book was pretty awful. I gave it 2 stars, but talking about it, I really don't have any positives to say about it. I thought it was boring. I thought the plot was terrible. I thought the writing was not as terrible, but like not great. So maybe this is a 1 star. Maybe I'll change my rating, kind of cement my rating from my worst books video. But yeah, this was a massive disappointment. The only reason that I finished it was because I had used a Libro FM credit on it. And I didn't want to waste that. I wanted to be able to be a fully informed hater about this book. Anyone telling you that this book is anything like a romance, has a romance plot, has a romance subplot, no. There is certainly romance, but it should not be considered part of the romance genre by any means. Like, it is the worst, so one of the worst, like, first of all, obviously one of the worst books I've read this year, but like, out of all the books that I have gone into expecting there to be a romantic element, this was the worst in terms of that element of a book. So I'll leave you with that. Don't waste your time with this book, is my opinion. Yeah. I read Her Majesty's Royal Coven and The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. These are 2, like, contemporary fantasies, I guess you would say. They take place in England and the UK, and we have witches, which is so fun. I think that these books are, like, quintessential witch books. If you haven't read a good witchy book in a while and you're looking for one, definitely check these out. In this series, we have this group of witches who are now grown adults, and when they were younger, they were in the same coven. They kind of grew up together, and they have this prophecy that they come across that there is going to be a child who brings this demon back into the world. So in the first book, they are trying to both protect this child that the prophecy says might become this like evil force, and also try to kind of save the world and prevent disaster. And then we also have their like kind of mundane interpersonal relationships and friendships and romances and cattiness and Britishisms, interesting like cultural commentary, socio-political commentary. I gave book 1 4 stars and book 2 4.5 stars. I'm really looking forward to finishing out this trilogy next year, and I highly recommend. Okay, I think I only have 2 fantasy books left. Both of them I did not like. So we have Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is a fantasy romance book, and I honestly don't even remember what this book was about. I really don't. We have this girl, she's like a healer. Let's recall this together, okay? In a world colonized by the gods and ruled over by the Descended, their cruel offspring, DM Bellator yearns to escape the insular life of her poor village. Her mother's disappearance, blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, we have these like, I guess, magical creatures who are descended from like these gods, and then we have like regular people, and so it's sort of an unequal balance of power and resources. We have this girl whose mother is missing. We have this man who is one of these, like, better, more beautiful creatures. Kind of like fae, but they're not called fae. I really just liked this book. I gave it 2.5 stars, apparently, but I think it really is a 2. See, some of these books that I really didn't like, talking about them, I just have, like, really nothing good to say. So I might change this one to a 2. Not much really happens in this book. with either the plot or the romance. Oh, this girl, I remember now, this girl is so stupid. There's this like really obvious thing in the book that is just so incredibly clear to us as the reader, I think, and to everyone but this girl, and she's just like not putting the pieces together, and it's just like so stupid and frustrating. There is a plot twist at the end that I didn't see coming, so I guess I'll give it that, but it didn't make me really want to read the next book at all. Yeah, I just thought this was bad. I truly did. I thought this was bad. I thought this was boring. I thought this was unoriginal, and truly don't recommend this book to anyone. So, yeah. And last for fantasy, we have a book that I truly wanted and expected to love but didn't, and that is The Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashem. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. This book is a romantasy that a lot of people really love. It is a very like slow burn kind of book, so a lot of people recommend it for people who are pickier with romantasy, and unfortunately I didn't like this one. I liked it more than The Spark of the Everflame, even though I gave them the same rating, so I think that this one is a true 2.5, whereas Spark of the Everflame is a 2 or maybe even a 1. In this world we have the kingdom of Jasad, which was like burned to the ground 10 years ago, and all the Jasadis are in hiding. They're hiding their identities, so they might have integrated into, you know, different places, but they are secretive about who they really are, facing pain of death or imprisonment. We have our main character who is a Jasadi, Sylvia. She's actually the Jasad heir, and she's living in this village when the prince, I don't know, the son of the main guy of this like oppressive kingdom that burned down her kingdom comes to town, and in order to save herself, she has to make a deal with him and kind of go along with his plans, even though she doesn't want to avoid getting imprisoned or killed. It is a very slow burn romance. This is not like a smutty kind of series. The romance is literally like a pinch of salt. I was expecting a lot more. Unfortunately, I just was bored. I kind of just wanted to be done with this book for a lot of it. I thought the plot was pretty slow. When I heard that this book was based on Egyptian mythology, I was so excited because I love Egyptian mythology, and I just didn't really get that much world building from this book. I thought it was rather light on the fantasy and on the world building, and it just felt so similar to every other romantasy book, and you know, kind of similar to Spark of the Everflame in terms of like the dynamic and how little there actually was in terms of magic and world building and any sort of uniqueness. I thought the writing style was good. I don't think that Sarah Hashem is a bad writer. It just wasn't for me, if that makes sense. Like, I don't necessarily disrecommend this book to people. I was like reading it and earnestly wanting to love it, but I just didn't. I liked the ending, I guess, but I don't think I'll be reading book 2, especially because book 2 is so long. And yeah, there wasn't even really, you know, a strong romance dynamic to latch onto, just because it is slow burn, so things aren't actually happening. So with a fantasy world that I didn't think was very good and a romance that was almost non-existent, I just had nothing to hold on to. Let's move on to romance books. So, I read Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young, and I gave this one 5 stars. Yes! Finally another 5-star from this author. I was so thrilled to have another win after Out on a Limb. So this book follows Lane and Matt, and they are both Canadian. They're in their like late 20s, I guess. Oh my god, I'm in my late 20s. I think she's like 27, and she's having a little bit of a identity crisis. She doesn't really know what she's doing with her life. She feels a little lost, and she decides to buy this school bus and convert it into like a cozy tiny home. And she gets the help of Matt, who is a mechanic, and a mutual friend who has become her friend. He's someone that she's often hanging out with in groups, but in this book we see them become like close one-on-one friends, and then obviously eventually lovers. I don't know what she put in this book, but I was just absolutely obsessed with this. I was locked into every page. I was having the time of my life. I loved both of these characters so much. I think this cover like depicts them perfectly. I love the like small road trip element we had to this. I loved the tension. People really like to shit on friends to lovers, but to me, there's nothing like the tension of having a friend who you have feelings for and not being able to share those feelings or act on those feelings because you don't want to ruin the friendship and you don't want to make things weird and just be rejected and then everything be awkward and terrible, you know? So I feel like those stakes are so high when you have like a really close friend. Highly recommend. This is the second book in a series, so I would read them in order just so you have the characters in your head and you know their background, but you don't have to. I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This is a quintessential fall book that has been really popular lately. Yes, Laurie Gilmore is a pen name. That is not her real name. It is meant to draw people into the Gilmore Girls cozy small town vibes, which indeed is what this book is. We have this town called Dream Harbor, which with a bunch of cute little small businesses. The economy of this town, don't ask because it does not make sense. But it is very picturesque and cutesy. We have, you know, nosy book club members and lots of people who own small businesses, and we have our main character Jeannie, and she inherits / buys this cafe, and she moves to town and she has to start running it by herself, and she meets Logan, who is a farmer, ? A local guy. He lives on a farm, and it's just a chill romance in this cozy little town, and there's a lot of side characters who also get their own books. I'm actually reading the Christmas one right now, The Christmas Tree Farm. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I read it at a time where I desperately needed something cozy and easy and fun, and that's exactly what this was. If you are not a fan of small towns and that cozy vibe, you are not gonna like these books because there's really nothing particularly excellent about like the writing or the characters or the plot. It really is so grounded in that cozy small town, like idyllic, picturesque, kind of welcoming and nice and, you know, inclusive that probably doesn't exist in real life. So it's just very escapist. So recommend with caution. I also read Ladies in Hating by Alexandra Vasti, and I loved this one. I didn't love it. I almost loved it. I gave it 3.75 stars. This is a historical Regency romance between two women who are rival Gothic novelists. Yes, you heard me right. It obviously has this gorgeous cover. I absolutely love it. This is what drew me to want to pick up this book, so props to the cover artist and designer because you did your job very well. So we have these two Gothic novelists who are about the same age, and they actually have a past with each other, but they are writing under pseudonyms, so they don't actually know that they are each other, you know what I mean? And so they have a bit of a rivalry because they keep writing weirdly similar books, or like they have similar references in their books, and one of these women is like, oh my god, this bitch is stealing from me, like she's like spying on me somehow, she's stealing my ideas, and they actually end up at the same Gothic manor doing like research for their next book, and they don't know that the other is going to be there. So it's just this really fun, unique, adorable Gothic premise. I thought this was really good. Maybe I was a little bit bored at some points, or it didn't like absolutely blow me away, which is why I think I gave it 3.75 stars, but honestly, talking about it, I only have positive things to say, so maybe it was like a true 4-star. But highly recommend if you're looking for something a bit different. I know a lot of people read a lot more contemporary than they do historical, but give historical romance a try because it is truly so good. Okay, let's talk about historical fiction / classics. I finally read Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi, and this is a historical fiction book where each chapter is from a different character's perspective. So at the beginning we have two half-sisters, in Ghana, and they go on to live very different lives. So one of these sisters ends up married to a wealthy Englishman, and the other one ends up as a slave. And so each chapter is from one of their descendants' perspectives. So we are really learning about the history of this family down the line. And each chapter is truly so just beautifully written, wonderfully written. I'm not really a lover of short stories, and that's not what this book is, but since we just have a different character in every single chapter, it does kind of feel like you're reading short stories. But she's such a talented writer that I was completely engaged with every single person's tale. So we go through 8 generations. So from the Gold Coast to the plantations of Mississippi, from the American Civil War to Jazz Age Harlem and beyond. So this is truly just such an expansive but also short book. It's just so special. I love this. I give it 5 stars. Highly recommend if you like historical fiction or if you want to start reading more of it. I don't read a ton of it anymore, but this is definitely a top tier recommendation. I finally finished my reread of Anne of Windy Poplars. I've never said the word poplar out loud. Poplar? It's a type of tree. This is book 4 in the Anne of Green Gables series, which is technically like a middle grade classic from the early 1900s. We follow Anne, who at the beginning of book 1 is an orphan who gets adopted by this brother and sister pair living in this beautiful farmhouse called Green Gables. And it's just a story of her life and her friends and her community, and she has such a rich imaginative inner life. It's so fun to follow Anne. And in this book, she is actually a teacher, and she moves to this town outside of her community of Avonlea. And yeah, this one was delightful. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think that every single moment in this was, equally as good. There were definitely some slower and more boring parts, but overall, the series is very delightful, and I look forward to continuing. This is actually the last one that I have already read, so yeah, it'll be fun to continue. I also read Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier this fall. This was written in the 1940s, I believe, but it takes place in like the 1500s or 1600s in England. So it is a classic, but it's also a historical fiction. I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is eventually a story about a woman having a midlife crisis and also a sexual awakening. So she lives in England, in London, with her husband, who is a member of the king's court. They're a very influential, a wealthy family, a titled family. I don't remember what their title is. But she takes her children to this kind of second home that they have out in the country that she's never really been to. And when she gets there, without her husband, by the way, she's just like sick of her husband. She's sick of her life. She wants adventure, she wants stimulation, she wants something different. When she gets to this house, things are kind of off, and she's kind of sensing that something is going on that she doesn't understand. And she meets this guy who is actually a pirate, and they have a romance. And that's essentially the book, is this woman kind of finding adventure in her life. And I think it's really ahead of its time for the 1940s, just like the concept of a woman who has been caged into marriage and kids and domesticity and silence and complicity, being, wanting more, being too intelligent and aware and vibrant for that kind of life. So, a very interesting book. Didn't love it, but I definitely liked it. I thought it was good. And I would recommend, if you like Daphne du Maurier. It's not a romance in the typical way of like spicy scenes and you're gonna be like absolutely rooting for these two to be together forever, but it is a very fascinating one. Let's talk about the one horror book that I picked up, which is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Let me take the dust off of this. This is a story about some kind of doctor, scientist guy who writes an ad in the paper for people to come to this haunted house, and he wants to like write about it and see what happens. And a few people answer his ad in the paper, and they come to this house, and yeah, it's a haunted house, and I hated this. I gave it 1 star. I did not enjoy a single moment of this book. I don't get it. I don't get why people like this book. It's not scary. It's not pleasant to read. It's not funny. It's not particularly deep in terms of talking about emotion or the human psyche, in my opinion. The dialogue was nonsensical at times, which I guess was part of the point, as this one character kind of like slowly loses her mind throughout the book, but it like was so subtle that it just felt like I was just reading bad writing, and I just really didn't get it. I don't know why people like this. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's interesting. It was incredibly boring and tedious. The only reason why I didn't DNF this was because I was reading it as part of a vlog where I had to read 5 books from my physical TBR before the end of the video, like to end the video, and this was the 5th book, and I wasn't about to DNF it and start an entirely new book, and this had been sitting on my shelves for years. So this is proof that you should not buy a book in a genre that you don't actually like that much just because it's pretty. Okay? So yeah, this is my only 1 star of the year so far. This is going to be in my worst books video. I'm going to talk about it more in depth and maybe skim over the book to find some examples of what I'm talking about, because I hated this. I truly did. Sorry to anyone who loves this. I'm just not the girl for Shirley Jackson, I think. Let's chat about nonfiction. I started out listening to Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and then I went out and bought myself a physical copy because I wanted to have it to reference and to annotate and to follow along with. This is essentially a reflection on nature and science and indigenous beliefs about the earth and ecology, and also her experience as a botanist and an indigenous woman. Basically how those two identities and those two ways of looking at the world intersect in her life. This is one of the highest rated nonfiction books you can come across, and it's because she is such a brilliant writer. I think she might have said that she's a poet, I don't know. And this book doesn't exactly feel like reading poetry, but you can just tell that she is such a gifted writer in terms of just like the prose and the beauty of the sentences that she's constructing. There are a lot of really interesting ideas in here, a lot of really calming and beautiful sentiments. There was definitely some science that went over my head, but that's okay. But overall, I do think some of the things she talks about are going to stick with me, and I think that this is due a reread someday. She does have a new book, a very short book that just came out that I have checked out from the library, so hopefully I will get to that. But yeah, if you want to read this, I think having the audiobook and the physical copy would be great. Maybe you can get both from your library, and if you like it, pick up a copy. The book is also made from like recycled material, so that is really cool. The other nonfiction book I managed to pick up and finish was The Once and Future Sex, Going Medieval on Women's Role in Society. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, by Eleanor Janega. And this is exactly what it sounds like. The author is going through how medieval women lived and were perceived in medieval times. She talked about the philosophers and the scientists that they had, the beliefs that, you know, medieval scholars had about women and their place in the world. Obviously, those ideas are crazy and ridiculous, and you know, she kind of debunks some myths about, you know, medieval women just like staying home and not working and, you know, being little trad wives and things like that. Yeah, I found this book really interesting. I gave this 4 stars. I also gave Braiding Sweetgrass 4 stars. I don't think I mentioned that. It was interesting. I probably need to read it again. That's the thing with nonfiction, is this, I always feel like I need to read them twice, but I don't want to. I want to just move on to something else. So I feel like I learned a lot, but also like, will I retain all that information? I don't know. But I think a lot of the concepts that she talked about are up here. And it is actually kind of disheartening how similar some of our beliefs about women are today. But I do recommend that one. I found it really interesting, and it was also pretty short and very easy to digest. You do not have to be any sort of historian or philosopher or anything to understand. Alright, our last category is mystery thriller. I read 2 Agatha Christie's on audio. I read Halloween Party and I read 3 Act Tragedy. Halloween Party I started out with in October. It was a great way to, start the month because it starts out at a Halloween party where this child says in conversation with a bunch of people that she's actually seen a murder before, and then later the same child is like drowned in a tub for like bobbing for apples, which when I say it out loud sounds really dark. But Agatha Christie's books are just so like quintessential like English cozy sometimes that it just feels very cozy. I didn't think the mystery for that one was very good, so I gave it 3 stars, but I did think that the Halloween aspects were kind of a fun setting. And then 3 Act Tragedy I was pretty disappointed with because I thought it was going to be more about like the stage and acting and plays, but it really wasn't. I think it's called that because one of the characters is an actor, like a famous actor. He has this dinner party. One of the guests is not murdered, but one of the guests dies from who knows. And they test the drink, thinking, okay, it was probably poisoned if there was murder. And it comes back negative for poison. And then I think there's another dinner party with like some of the same people where somebody else dies, and so Poirot is trying to figure out like what's going on because there's like no motive for these murders and like no positive for poison. This one is pretty forgettable. I don't even remember really what happened. It was kind of boring. I didn't really like this one, but I gave it 3 stars. I gave it 2.75 stars because it was like worse than Halloween Party, but it wasn't like terrible, so like almost good, almost fine, but like not really. So I guess I didn't really like that one, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, Agatha Christie is Agatha Christie, so it was clever but forgettable, and I found the side characters to be pretty bland. I also read The Killer Question by Janice Hallett. If you don't know Janice Hallett, all of her mystery books are like told in emails or texts or documents of some kind. It's not like a regular novel format. And in this one we have a murder that takes place around a trivia night at this pub. They call it a pub quiz, but to people in North America it's trivia. So we're in this small English village at this pub, and there's a weekly trivia night. So we have the same people who come to these trivia nights, and we have, we know about the 2 owners of the bar, and there's a man who's murdered, and so we have all these characters who are like regulars at this bar, and it was just really interesting. I loved how the story was told. I loved reading through all the texts and the emails and the documents. It was just so fun. I gave this 4 stars. I thought this was really good. It's kind of hard for a mystery book to get like 5 stars from me these days, but highly recommend this one, especially if you kind of romanticize England a little bit and you like reading about small English towns and stuff. That was a really fun part of this for me. And then I think our last book, if I'm not mistaken, of the fall is Killers of a Certain Age, which is actually the last book I finished in November, which was not intentional. This is a book about women in their early 60s who have had a career of being assassins. They work for this extra governmental organization that basically kills really bad people, and they are invited on kind of this like retirement celebratory cruise, and while they're on the cruise they realize that there is a hit out on them. Someone from their organization is on the boat. They weren't meant to see them, but they accidentally come across them, and they have to get out of this situation alive, figure out why they're being targeted, why they're, if they've seen something they shouldn't have, if there's a conspiracy, if there's a misunderstanding, what's going on. And it's just so fun following, women in their early 60s, because usually we're following really young women in books. I had a lot of fun with this one. I gave it 4 stars. Again, kind of hard for a mystery book to get above a 4 these days, but it was really good. Didn't like absolutely blow me away and make me obsessed with it, but I had such a fun time and I am excited to continue on. Oh my god, those are all the books I read this fall. Let me know if you have any thoughts on any of these. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week, and don't forget to subscribe. Wait, don't don't forget to be awesome. Don't forget to have a wonderful week. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me, and have a wonderful week.